Hi, welcome back. Now, in the last video, we were looking at exploring, the structure, the DBT folder structure. But in this particular video, we will be looking a bit into some other parts. We're still exploring. We're still getting used to, DBT. And one thing I would maybe like us to sort of have a quick look is the DBT project YAML file. The DBT project YAML file, like I said, is more like a configuration folder. It's a configuration folder that sort of connects the profile, which is essentially connecting to the profile YAML file that we created when we end our Snowflake details and, the database where we plan to store our queries, our test results of the queries. And of course, this same file basically also references like which folders will have our models or our analysis or seeds and all that. And then one very important thing that this file also does for us is it basically sets the default type of table that our model sort of creates. Now, what does this mean? If you check, you notice that like there is something that says like, okay, models, all the models in the Briteflux warehouse basically should be materialized as view. Now, what this means is that whenever we do not specify the table, whenever we do not specify the materialized type of materialization that we want to have, then it will automatically choose the view. So the default will be the view, right? So it will be a view type of model that will be created. I'll explain. Now, the difference between a view and a table is a table essentially, your normal object, your normal database object that you usually have where you have where you sort of store your data. Now, your view is essentially like a result of a query. So it's not really a, a table, right? It doesn't really occupy any space in your data warehouse. It's just a result of a query. So basically what happens is for every time you try to access a view, it runs the query that you have saved. So it's just like a saved query, right? And that's why it's not really, it doesn't consume the storage space. Now, one of the very good times to use a view is essentially if you don't want to save the query, for instance, if you don't want to save the data, maybe you already have the data in your warehouse, but for some reason, you would just like to have another version of it, which is, for instance, when you're trying to stage the data. And this is some things that we're still coming to. But for the meantime, the whole point of this DBT project file is basically it's trying to configure the full behavior of DBT. So how would DBT sort of like work? Where will we expect to have our models? And what will be, the default materialization? So you have different types of materialization. As we have said, we have the views, we have the incremental models, which are essentially another type of tables, but they are sort of some things that we'll also explore in the future. So when we look at these first two models, and this is the next one, this particular video, when we look at the first two models, right, these are, preset models that was created when we initiated our DBT project, you would notice that you see this instruction which says like, welcome to your first DBT model. Did you know that you can configure models directly with SQL file? This will override configuration stated in your DBT YAML file. So now try changing the table to view below. So what I did essentially saying is that the fact that we put table here, it basically overrides the view that was the default in the DBT project YAML file. And so what we have here is we have a query, which is basically selecting from the source data, right? Sorry, we have a query that basically created CTE that unions like this data that we have created. So we have like this data, and then we somehow select from the CTE, right? So we created the data. We are not pulling the data from any source. We will still go ahead to see how we can pull data from different sources. But for now, then we would then look at the second model. What the second model is doing is, second model is essentially referring to the first model. So the second model is just an extension of the first model. It's built on top of the first model, right? So the table that we are referencing, and when you see this reference, it's like, it's like when you create some sort of dependency on some other models. And this is the whole point of the DAG. And this brings us to the DAG topic, which is something that we will definitely see a lot of in DBT.